Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Manhattan Jewish Experience Facebook Live event. It's called Love is Blind, but we are all here and we can all see each other. And we're going to be talking all things dating in the age of Corona. So want to welcome everyone. We'll give everybody a minute or two just to log on, and we'll introduce everybody. This is an open panel, so if you have questions for the dating experts, please submit them in the questions in the comment section, and we will try to get to as many as we can. Hold on one second. Let me turn that off. Okay, so I want to introduce my co-panelists for tonight. I'm Binyamin Cohen, the moderator for the evening. You may know my older, wiser brother, Rabbi Ezra Cohen of the Manhattan Jewish Experience. Joining us tonight is Marc Goldman. You may know him by his business that he runs, and that is he is the creator of sawyouatsinai.com, which is a Jewish dating website. And he, prior to that, he worked on Wall Street for over a decade. And while racing on the ski team at Columbia University, he inadvertently became a matchmaker when two couples met on one of his trips and they later got married. So this is kind of in his DNA. And Marc right now is married and living in New York, and he has 4 children. And he was just telling me before we got on that his wife is a healthcare professional on the front line. So we want to thank her for her work during this during these interesting and strange and surreal times.
Thank you.
So that's Marc Goldman. We'll refer to him as Marc with a C because we have 2 Marcs on the panel tonight. Next we have Brooke Wise, who's joining us from Florida tonight. She is a professional matchmaker. And she, hold on one second, I lost my place. She spent time also on Wall Street and decided to leave that behind and help people connect in a more meaningful way. And her company is called Wise Matchmaking. You can go there if you want to get connected with her. And she is a professional matchmaker who works in New York and Florida and all over. And she's married and has 2 children. So Brooke, welcome to the show. And finally, Marc with a K, Rabbi Mark Wildes, needs no introduction, but I'll give him one anyway. He's the founder and director of the Manhattan Jewish Experience. And in addition to being a rabbi, he also has a master's in international affairs, and he went to law school. So he kind of puts us all to shame with the multiple degrees. He's the author of the best-selling book Beyond the Instant and host of the popular new podcast called The Wildes Cast. You should check that out. And he lives with his wife, Jill, and their 4 children in New York City. So once again, this is an open panel discussion. If you have questions you want to ask, just feel free to submit them in the comments, and we will try to get to as many as we can. First off, I just wanted to throw kind of a generic question out to the panel. Anyone's welcome to answer this. How has matchmaking and dating changed in the age of Corona? Who wants to take that one first?
Sure. Yes, I'll go first from Marc is in the app, not app, on the website, on the internet, in the internet world. You know, I set people up one-on-one. So obviously when this happened, you can't meet somebody at a bar, you can't go to a restaurant, you're wearing masks, you can't, it's like, how do you date? It was shock. And then I think when the dust settled a bit, people have been starving for human interaction. So I think, people are social. They don't want to be alone. So I think it's kind of, obviously changed the way I work with people where, it's not unheard of to do a Zoom date, a FaceTime date very early on. I do think you can, get to know people, but of course there are limitations. But yeah, I think it's definitely changed a lot. But I think that ultimately when this is over and people can meet, I think they're going to run out and meet people. I think they're, you know, I think where I'm in a good position is I am connecting people. They're connecting virtually. They're seeing if there's something there. They can really get to know somebody. When you're on a Zoom, you can see someone's apartment. You could see them without all their makeup, and you could see them a little bit more real. And if you do find that there is an attraction there, I think that almost is stronger. So, and then it's kind of leading to old fashioned courting where you really have to get to know somebody and then see where it is when you do meet face to face.
So when I guess the coronavirus first really hit, and everyone started to hunker down, what we initially saw was people were, at least from a Soyo Itzani perspective, people were really withdrawing and deciding I'll take a little bit of a break. And this happened before Passover. I think after a month later, between Purim and Passover, everything changed. People were already starting to get very antsy. People wanted to get back out there, and it was a very strong change to saying, okay, I've taken my 1 month break. I've taken my time off to kind of recharge. I can't sit around and do nothing. And that was a clear change in mentality from I'll just wait this out to I cannot wait this out. I can't just sit around and do nothing. And a willingness to try things, whether it was a Zoom dating or other virtual ways of meeting somebody that they were not willing to try beforehand. I've seen many more people willing to try matchmakers. People that were not willing to even consider that idea beforehand are now very willing to do that because they don't have the ability to go to a bar. They don't have the ability to meet somebody at a party or something else. So this becomes a very valid way of trying to meet in a way that they never considered before. In addition, what we have found is that when a time is serious, like it is now, it starts to change people's priorities and the way they're looking at the world. And somebody who might have been, I don't want to say a player, but let's say not as serious, can all of a sudden change their whole outlook on life when they're sitting at home alone and realizing that they don't have anybody with them right now. And we've seen that as well. People that played around for a long time are now taking a different attitude towards going out there and dating today. Obviously, you can't meet someone face to face so easily. So Zoom is a very popular way that people are using. We can discuss maybe a little bit later. We've used a lot of Zoom formats, whether it's a group dating atmosphere or one-on-one dating atmosphere, to try to encourage people. But there already is a change in the way people are looking at things, and hopefully that will carry over to even to the time when people are starting to meet face to face again, of realizing kind of the seriousness of what goes on in the world and how quickly circumstances and people can change.
So I'll just chime in as well. Thank you. First of all, I just want to thank you, Benjamin and Brooke and Mark, for joining. It's really an honor to be able to have this conversation with you. I'll pick up on Mark's last point. There was a record-breaking number of engagements in the 6 months following 9/11. I remember this. And I used that back then to get more and more people from the MGE world, 20s and 30s, to be dating more seriously. Not to be dating, but to be dating more seriously in terms of the approach. And I'm really hopeful that because when you have a crisis, it sometimes brings out the best and people get a little more serious about what they want out of life. The whole quarantining and being alone, I think, Brooke, you touched on this, how it's just people are just antsy and trying to be social. So MGE moved very, very quickly from in-person events to online. Our population is extremely comfortable with that, so we moved very, very fast. I want to give Binyamin and his brother Rabbi Ezra a big, pat on the back for helping with that. And I've been encouraging people. I said, just like we've had to change to a new normal, the dating world needs to change to a new normal. It's just, if this thing went on for a month, then maybe people can just, put their social lives on hold for a month. But it's over 2 months and it's going to be longer. And even when we get back to normal, it's going to be a new normal. And it's just unhealthy. I put out a blog recently where I talked about the Torah perspective on being alone. Lo tov hiyot adam levado. It's not good for man to be alone. That still applies today. And I'm really encouraging many of my students. I wrote a blog called Give Zoom Dating a Chance. And I said that whether two people can actually fall in love online remains to be seen, but it is a platform that enables two people to get to know each other and even to build a real relationship. I have one student, I mentioned this in the blog, who met somebody during this period of time, is now calling her his girlfriend. Another young woman said to my wife that the guy she got fixed up with got sent dinner in advance so that they could enjoy the Zoom date over dinner. I just thought that was sweet, and I'm just trying to encourage more and more, because my initial reaction was like, people were like, done. They're not doing any socializing, not doing any dating, and it's just really unhealthy. So I wrote this this blog to really encourage people to date more. And I think, like Brooke was mentioning, we can go back to a little old-fashioned kind of dating where we really get to know each other, not as quickly as we're always used to in a 20-minute, drink in a bar, quick cup of coffee in Starbucks, where we can actually get to know another person. There's no other distractions. I also said it's much cheaper than having to go out and buy somebody a drink even. And there's just a lot of advantages that we can work off of. And even if they're not as good, they're dumbed down, the dating is not as quality, we don't want to be wasting precious time.
Can Zoom dates be as productive as in-person ones? Are they more productive since there's, like you were saying, Rabbi, like there's less distractions, you're not in a busy bar? What is anyone want to voice their opinion on that?
One thing I mentioned also was that, I think, look, not being able to be in the same room and seeing their body gestures and movements and the way a person sort of, is, the vibe, if you will. On the other hand, the Zoom dates removes the pressure and the distraction that comes with physical or sexual intimacy that is unfortunately so expected these days. And the fact that physical contact is just not an option today, I feel, and I've spoken to couples who have agreed, it takes a little of the pressure off, and it helps the couple focus on the deeper aspects of their personalities. And this can really help develop the kind of clarity that is often absent in relationships when physical contact is part of the whole equation. So that's my feeling, at least one advantage besides the price of Zoom dating.
I think to play
Mark
on
or
that,
Brooke? Yeah.
play on that point, Rabbi, the opportunity really to form that deeper bond and a genuine bond is definitely there because you don't have a choice. You can fall back on a sexual attraction and ability to feel that sexual charge over drinks that you cannot fall back on here. So if you get into a deeper, the only way to do it is by discussing things that are meaningful. If not, it's going to get very quiet on the call very quickly. Mm-hmm. So you don't have that to fall back on. And the opportunities that are put out there today, whether it's dating apps or just going out, are very much focused, unfortunately, too often on the physical attraction at times, and that can lead to confusing results. Confusing results if they don't know which direction they want the relationship to go in, and they're not on the same page. Here, everyone's on the same page. No one's going to expect something at the end of the date that maybe the other person was not willing to participate in. Here, you're getting to know somebody. If that becomes a more serious relationship, well, that you're going to be able to start telling by having that conversation. And there was a little comment that was put up there. I don't see who said it, but how do you make it less like a interview? Well, whenever you go out, and in some ways you are in fact interviewing somebody, you're doing it in a more natural social way, but you are in fact doing that. So when you're trying to do it on Skype, whether you're going ahead or Zoom or anything else that might be, you should go ahead and try to make it as a relaxed environment as possible by having a glass of wine next to you. If you're used to going out to a bar to have a drink, so have a glass of wine. Each of you, one have a white wine, one have a red wine. You can use that as discussion. Who likes that better? Who's something else? So use other crutches to allow you to feel a little more comfortable and a little bit better the way you would normally date as well. But it's not going to be the same. But you do have an opportunity to force yourself to get to know somebody on a deeper level than you would have otherwise, and rather than falling back on the crutch of physical attraction.
Brooke, did you want to add anything to that? If not, I have a follow-up question for you.
I would.
Yeah. Yeah, go for it.
I would add that the positives are you don't have to worry about picking the wrong spot to go, the wrong bar. It's too loud. You can't hear her. There really aren't many distractions, which is good and bad. But you don't have to worry so much about the awkward hug hello, like that's not in there anymore. So there are some benefits. You can be more comfortable. Like, yes, you have to still, it is, I hate when people ask, but it was a question, and it is an interview, it is an audition. You do want to put your best foot forward. Just because it is a Zoom doesn't mean you should be in your sweats and your athleisure or whatever. Unless it's really nice athleisure, I guess. But you still put forth the effort. And so I do like the idea of order. Like, I had somebody who told me that one of my clients on their second Zoom date ordered her Italian food, ordered her champagne, and really made it special and made it like a date, and was creative and thoughtful. And I think those, that goes, a long way in this. But I think you do still want to make an effort, even though you're in your apartment. And but I think everyone's trying to adapt and make changes, because you still have to meet somebody. You can't be I think it's great that it was a short time where the rabbi said they were like, I'm done. Like, I have to, figure out a way, because it's very depressing to be alone and single. And I always talked about.
Looks like we lost her. Hopefully she'll jump right back in. Can you guys still hear me okay?
Yeah.
Mark and Mark?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Hopefully Brooke will rejoin us. I have a question.
Actually, Benjamin, I'll just jump right in. Just something I was going to comment on something Brooke just said. The Jewish idea, it's called in Hebrew hachana, of preparation. I've always said this to particularly guys over the years, which is that don't just show up on a date, this is before Corona, without, doing a little preparation. If things flow too easily. Oh, is she coming back?
Yeah, she's coming back.
Okay, great. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
That's
back.
okay.
Okay.
That's that part of Zoom. That could happen.
That's what happens with a live.
No, Brooke, I was just saying, I was just jumping on something that you had mentioned. The Hebrew word for, doing prep, hachana, is such an important area when it comes to dating. Mm-hmm. And I pointed this out in my blog also, that to the degree that people can really invest something, because there's so little investment. And I feel like the less investment, the less we're going to be, excited about it. And that's why the examples you gave of sending something in advance, or whatever you can do to make it like a special hour, I think will just up the ante a little and formalize the experience. So it just won't be, because a lot of my students, a lot of people are just sort of waking up late and just flowing into one part of their day from the next. Even if they're working at home, it's just one big blah. And then the date just becomes another part of the blah, if you will. Right. So I'm just suggesting to our viewers that the more you put into something in advance, the more, hopefully something can come out.
Brooke, I had a follow-up question for you on this topic. I'm curious to know, from a matchmaker's perspective, you probably meet a lot of people who, for better or worse, have a lot are let's say picky daters. I want to date someone who's this height with this kind of hair and this kind of job and all those kinds of the menu item of things. Do you think that this time that we're all sheltering in place, that maybe it might get some of your clients to rethink their priorities? Maybe that it's particularly, that they want to mate at this time, they want a partner at this time, that maybe they're going to shift their point of view on the things that they're looking for in a relationship.
I think yes and no. I mean, I wish that what you said was 100% true, and that, but it's people, especially men, I find like I was before I got on this this Facebook live. I had a woman who was not happy to just it almost felt like it's almost like now the Zooms and the FaceTimes are quicker, and so it's like, there's that part of it. I do think though that where it's been interesting is people who maybe were not like so inclined to work with a matchmaker are like, wow, like I really need to do something now. Like I have been very, very picky, and I haven't made this a priority. I've focused on my work and this, and and here I am, like, I'm all alone, and I don't know what's going to happen to it's scary. And so I think it's kind of where I do think people are realizing that and I hope what the rabbi said about with 9/11, I believe that too. I think, yeah, weddings are going to be tough. I don't know how they're going to have the weddings, but I feel like people are going to want to get married. There are going to be like financial crash babies. Like I think all these things are like, oh wait, like I can say my daughter happens to be one of them. I'm just saying, but like I do think that this is going to really make people say, wow, family is so important. Like if I didn't have my family right now,
Right.
oh my God. And I think it is going to work to what the rabbi said about after 9/11. That's my thoughts. I mean, I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's what I think will happen.
Yeah.
So regarding the list, or it's more of a, I guess, reprioritizing as much as anything else. So that list then changes. Yes, hopefully it is shorter as well, but it's changing. The coronavirus kind of pandemic of forcing us inside and alone has almost time warped a lot of people years ahead of where they might have been otherwise, of saying, okay, I have enough being single. So if they were at year one, and rather than being now in year two, you're already at year 6 or 7 of being kind of fed up with it because you're not having the distractions of running around. And you realize, again, what's more important in life. And as Brooke just said about family, they realize, okay, who are they going back to? They're going back to their parents. They're going back to their siblings. They're realizing the connections there. And also the nephews, nieces, they realize kind of where everything is put down and really established in place for them. And that makes people then start reconsidering about what's really important, what's not. And the idea that a lot of times people have these long lists, as you call them, Benjamin, is they say, well, why should I, quote unquote, settle? And I think it's a bad word to use, settle. It's more about compromising about things that you feel okay to compromise about. Whether it's a big business deal, if someone goes into it and is not willing to compromise in a big business deal, majority of them would never happen because each side has to give a little bit. And so you make a multi-million-dollar deal because you compromise. Does that mean you had a bad deal for yourself? Does that mean you can look back and be unhappy because you gave up on something that you thought was important within the deal? Well, hopefully not, because if you look at the bigger picture, in the case of a financial deal, you say, oh, wow, I got much more out of it. Hopefully, if you're compromising, not settling, but compromising on something that was really not so critical to a relationship, that later on you realize the benefits of being in that serious relationship, hopefully marriage later on when a family, far outweighs the compromise you might have made in a very small area.
By the way, if I can just jump in, I think that analogy of buying a building.
I'm sorry if that's
no, I agree. MGE for years, we've been always looking for other space, but we have a beautiful space, the 10th and 11th floor of the Jewish Center, but I'm always dabbling. I'm always looking. And I know that the real estate brokers can always tell, if you're serious or not, because if you're serious about buying a building, then you start, you don't pay attention to every problem issue here and there. You're like, I want to buy a building. I'm serious about buying a building, but I need to do it in a smart way. And I think dating is the same thing. This has nothing to do with Corona. But if a person really wants to get married and they're serious about it, then it's just a very, very different attitude when it comes to dating. It doesn't mean you throw out the list, but it probably means you tweak it so that the most important things are left, because realistically, I want to be married and it's just not a real thing to do that if I keep pulling out something new every 6 months.
Right.
Anyway, I just thought it was an interesting analogy.
Along the same lines, I wonder if Corona creates a real possibility for an intense emotional connection, because we're all intensely emotionally traumatized right now, and we're all stressed and in crisis. So, on one level, it's interesting. Corona creates this intense isolation, but I wonder if perhaps it offers a possibility for intimacy that would have been harder to attain, before Corona.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I mean, I notice even personally, there are certain friends or family members that I want to call more now than I did previously, which, they provide more comfort, or so I think it kind of could work with the same way. I think, there's somebody that maybe you wouldn't have connected with before, but you feel like there's you're connecting this way, and you feel like they're providing you comfort during a really tough time. So I think, that's definitely possible.
Yeah.
Again, without the distractions, I think that's required. I mean, that's what's going to. If not, it's going to end very quickly anyway. Then, so either you're going to get to a more serious point much faster, or it's going to fizzle out very quickly online. Because without that meaningful conversation and without the meaningful kind of progression, there's no way it's going to go to a second, third, fourth
Right.
type of a date, because you don't have that kind of. What was that, Binyam? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. We have a comment from somebody. They said, but is that a false intimacy when you meet someone new and you kind of do this on Zoom like that?
I think it's the opposite. I think it's the opposite, because there's a false intimacy if all of a sudden you just purely basing your decision on a spark, a pilot that's lit because you're with someone physically, you're feeling that charge, and you're overlooking so many of the other things that at times are critical to a long-term relationship. Here, you're focused on those things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not going to say that there is no physical attraction that's necessary, but it's going to allow you to identify the traits and characteristics that are important to you way beyond just the here and now of playing around, whether it's just trying to get to know somebody and bantering in a way that's really not getting down to who the essence is of the person. You're forced to do that here. So you're getting to points that might not have been gotten to for 3-6 months. And then you'll be able to fill it in with hopefully the nice intimate feelings later on when you do able to meet face to face.
Yeah. No, I think it's an excellent point, Mark. And the question, I think it was Amanda Thurm that asked that. I remember when I was single on the West Side a couple of years ago. My roommate at the time unfortunately got sick, and he had just started dating a girl, a young woman, and their relationship got more serious, in more quickly. And at first I thought, like, oh, that's not so. That's like a little artificial. Is that real? But what it did was it filled in the gap what's often missing in dating. You see, the Hebrew word for love, ahava, is rooted in the term hav, which means to give. And true love only happens when you're invested and you're giving of yourself. And often dating doesn't really set up the right kind of environment for really giving and devoting. We all know, those of us married with kids, how much investment and devotion you have to give. And that's where the love comes from. Where's all the giving with dating? How much do you have to give when you date someone? And here you have a situation where people are feeling a sense of insecurity, of vulnerability, a sense of loneliness. There's more giving involved, and that can help develop and cultivate the relationship. And I don't think it's false, and I don't think it's unreal. I'll just end with one other beautiful Jewish teaching. The Ramban, the great Nachmanides, wrote that the only time that there's a mitzvah mid'oraita, that there's a biblical command to pray, is be'et tzara, at a time of distress. Now, you should always pray, but the Ramban says that there's a biblical command to pray when something goes wrong in life. Now, you could get very cynical. You say, oh, no atheists and foxholes. Of course you're praying. You need God.
Right.
But what does it show? It shows that when things come down to it, you really believe that there is a greater force out there that I need in my life. And that's really what's happening now. People are recognizing that we need to be with someone else, and being alone is just not where it's at. And that's not false. And that is not artificial. That's actually a very, very real thing. One exception, and I do have students, unfortunately, who are really, you know, unfortunately not doing well. This has been a very, very painful period for a decent amount of people who are disconnected from their families and are alone. And some of them are really going through a rough time and need a little, you know, I would say therapy and to need to deal with some real serious psychological issues. And I would not recommend those individuals to be dating away. So I think generally speaking, I don't think it's a false sense of connection. I think it's actually beautiful, and I think it fills in some of what's missing in terms of giving to other people when we date. But of course, there are some exceptions as well.
I want to take a brief pause for 1 second. Let people submit your questions in the comments section, and hopefully we'll get to them. I just want to do a little commercial. We teased this before earlier tonight before we went live on the Manhattan Jewish Experience Facebook page. But there is a discount for those of you who are watching tonight who want to try out Saw You at Sinai. Anyone who's watching tonight, if you go to sawyouatsinai.com and use the code MJE, Manhattan Jewish Experience, MJE, you'll get a free month. And if you're already a current member, you'll get a free extra month. So check that out. Thank you, Marc Goldman, for making that available to our viewers. We talked about taking dating more seriously. None of us know when this is going to end and when life will get back to normal. Is it a month from now? Is it 6 months from now? Is it 9 months from now? Is it okay to start these Zoom dating, and you may not actually start in-person dating for months and months to come? So do you think it's still okay to start those relationships even though the actual in-person meeting may not happen, or the in-person interactions where you often learn a lot about people? You learn what upsets them, you learn what, all the little idiosyncrasies that you meet when you spend in-person time with someone. Are you creating this? I remember when I was single, many years ago, I was dating a girl from Canada, and this was before long distance was ubiquitous, and you had to pay like $1 a minute or something. And I would spend hours talking to her on the phone for a month, and we developed this, what I thought was a very meaningful relationship. And we finally decided to meet halfway. We went to New York and we met, and after 10 minutes, we knew it wasn't meant to be. And so basically, we both had spent like a month in this relationship that really didn't go anywhere. And so I'm wondering if the same question applies here if we're doing all these Zoom dates. At what point is it like, okay, we've been Zoom dating for 3 months, now what?
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, go ahead, Brooke. You were going to say something.
Yeah, I would say, it's tricky. You really don't want to be Zooming for too long, because I do think Zooming is better than just emailing, texting, or talking on the phone. I think it's definitely a step beyond that. And I do think you could kind of gauge a baseline chemistry and get somewhat of a sense for somebody. You see them in their environment apart, so I think you can get more, but then it is like a long distance thing. If you keep building this up, and then you meet, and then it's like a disappointment.
Right.
So I think if you've acknowledged that there's something there over, I don't know, 2-3 Zooms, maybe even less, and you feel like when they're talking to you about how they're dealing with Corona, they're being very much in the same space as you are, where they haven't been very much. They haven't been on the subway. They haven't been all over the place. You feel comfortable that they're wearing masks. They're like, you don't feel like they're they're on the same, page as you. Then I think you can set up I know a couple that they first went and they did a rollerblading date, outside, or, I think you want to move to that. And it's actually, for this case, that was a good date. And they're seeing each other, in his apartment, and they're I wouldn't call them exclusive, but they're dating, they are exclusive. Because I think that's also a very tricky thing, because you don't want to be dating somebody and then they're dating other people and you don't know what's, especially in this environment. So that's very tricky. But before I went on my tangent, I was just trying to say that you don't want the Zooms to go too long because there will be, a big buildup, and you don't want then you meet and it falls flat.
I mean, I would just jump on. Thank you, Brooke. I'm speaking totally theoretically. I don't know if what I'm about to share will be borne out in the world of actual reality. But from a pure Torah perspective, we believe, and one of the most important criteria for a marriage is physical attraction. Mm-hmm. And as long as I don't know how my co-panelists feel or anyone listening to this, can you get enough of a sense of physical attraction without having to actually be in the same room? Because we don't believe from a pure Torah perspective that physical intimacy is necessary in order for one to know whether or not one is compatible with another person for marriage. We believe in physical attraction, but sexual compatibility we leave for after the marriage, of course, traditionally speaking, as a way not of a gauge to determine whether this is the right person or not. That's attraction. But physical intimacy is really a way to build the relationship once the commitment has been made. I got a lot of Torah and a lot of shiurim on this that you can listen another time. But I'm just thinking, if that's the Torah perspective, sort of the pure Torah perspective, that what we do need is physical attraction, but we don't need physical intimacy, then why can't we, I'm just throwing it out there, why can't the couple continue to date on Zoom and that be enough? Assuming that, yeah, go ahead, Mark.
I think that although from a Torah ideal that might work, the reality is that people's mindsets are so far away from that to get from where they are today to the Torah mindset and say, okay, we're going to jump all the way over to the Torah says the best way to do it, from where we are today would be a very, very big jump. Mm-hmm. I think the coronavirus situation has caused at least a migration to be closer to where the Torah value is, where you're forced to not decide first, is there a sexual attraction? And then, oh, by the way, is there also other attractions as well? We're being forced into that today. But I guess the spark that sometimes people feel they need today would have to start to be there before people would say, oh, this is so different in a negative way from the feelings I've had with people that I had a good attraction to. I think it would be hard to, as Brooke was saying, to not progress to the meeting face-to-face situation. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean that you're quickly then making up lost time that, okay, now we're a month into relationship, let's get a month into relationship where we are from a physical standpoint. It just means that you want to see, is there that spark when you are meeting face-to-face?
Yeah, I think that's a point very well taken, very well said. And I don't know if when the Gemara says that you're not supposed to marry someone unless you first see them. Okay, because I think the implication is that you need to be attracted. Can you? Yeah. Is it enough to see them like we're seeing each other now, or do you really need to be in the same room? Traditionally, even for the Hasidic world, it means to be in the same room. I'm just sort of playing it out, ideologically, but I guess on a very practical level, where most people are, it's just not realistic. I just think it's so interesting though, because that distinction between physical attraction and sexual compatibility is something that I've made over the years. And I realize that most of the world is just not living that kind of life, but it is sort of a Torah ideal to think about a little.
I just want to take one more. We took a commercial for Sinai. I want to now take a commercial for, if those of you who want to get in touch with Brooke to discuss anything related to dating or matchmaking, her website is wisematchmaking.com.
Thank you.
Wisematchmaking.com. It's a smart.
You can put MJE in your sign, and it'll carry weight.
Brooke, we should talk also. I got a couple of customers for you.
Oh, okay, great. But I don't have a coupon or anything. But yeah. But I think it's. I love what you said, Rabbi, about Ahava, because when I went to Israel for the first time actually last year, And that was what stuck with me so much, was what I went with a group, a momentum group, and they spoke about ahava and how it means, how the root of love means to give, and how, when you think about like the love you give for your children, and just, and I think about that a lot with just relationships. It's like, you love so much to someone that you are giving to, and I think in this environment that I haven't thought of it again, but it is very, it's very powerful. Yeah, I think if you feel like you're really comforting or giving to somebody in this time, I think it is a real bond. I don't think it's a superficial bond.
I'm curious, am I allowed to ask Brooke a question, or am I stepping on your toes, Mignon?
No, you go for it.
Now, is there anything you can suggest to couples, or just people who are just starting to date, that could help fill that in a little? I've said to people over the years, after you're going out a few times, I've said this to a number of men, why don't you buy her something? I know it sounds a little artificial, but just to invest yourself a little more. If you have any ideas, I just find that is helpful. It helps sometimes move the relationship forward a little.
Yeah, well, I agree with Mark on the wine. Like, I think that's a nice thing to do, especially right now, and to have maybe you send her a bottle of wine. She tells you what she likes. You show that you're thoughtful, and you said, I think a huge thing is listening. I think if you just pick up on something she mentions that she likes, or that is important to her, and then you just like she likes to run or something, and you then, I should maybe get her not a Peloton, but maybe it's a Peloton app or something like that, or just something that you're thinking that it shows her that you listened to something that she said and thought of a way to, because I always think that I mean, I'm a victim of that as well. It's like whenever I talk to somebody, a client or someone, and I'm talking more than they are, I know that's not good. So I think, it's really about active listening, not just like listening and it going here. So, so I think that's what I think would really move things along, being thoughtful and actually listening and to things that she's interested in, and doing a little research and sending her something. And it doesn't have to be expensive. It just a little gesture could go a long way.
Thank you.
We've had a bunch of people ask a similar question. We've talked a lot about Zoom dating. How do you actually meet someone to Zoom with? There's a lot of, strangers out there. And I know there's been a lot of there's been a lot of Facebook groups that have started for singles in the age of Corona while they're in quarantine. How do you meet someone who's going to be good for you to Zoom with?
So we actually, one of the things we did right after Passover, we actually started running them right through the site. And we did that through the matchmakers, because matchmakers are able to facilitate those Zoom dating process. And it's not one-on-one Zoom dating the way we're doing it. We're doing actually groups. And that way, the matchmakers now become facilitators within those rooms, ensuring that usually there are about 10 people in there, 5 men, 5 women, and facilitate to make sure everyone has a chance to say something, introduce themselves. They usually keep the calls around 40 to 45 minutes. They, from a very, very high level, they're trying to just look on paper who might be most compatible with each other. So they're also doing some pre-selecting there as well. And they've been going on. We actually have about 4 events a week that go on through 2 partners as well as numerous matchmakers, various age ranges. Sometimes they do West Coast based, sometimes they do East Coast based. They've decided not to be purely New York centric, because one of the things we're saying is open up your horizons a little bit to see if that perfect person might have been more than 2 miles away from you. So we've been running them and trying to have filtered processes and then give feedback to the matchmakers and to see if there is a good compatibility. We're also doing that as well, because that way, if it happens to be that you see some of the people on the call with you who you might have been interested in, but you fear that they are in maybe your circles going back and forth, you can then give the feedback right online to the matchmakers. And then the matchmakers kind of see as their mutual interest, rather than putting yourself in an awkward situation once you are back out again, that you don't have to have said no when the other person clearly had said yes to you. So we are setting those up. We're kind of running those and trying to run those hopefully efficiently and quite often. We probably have about 200 people a week coming through the Zoom groups that we've been setting up.
So Mark, if I can just ask, because I want to give encouragement to a lot of our listeners, because a lot of people are feeling good. They've met someone. A lot of people are feeling more alone than ever. So if they sign up for Soyo at Sinai, I mean, in other words, they'll have access not only to, maybe getting fixed up through one of the volunteer matchmakers, but getting into one of these, these sort of Zoom rooms or whatever we're calling them. Is that correct?
Correct. I mean, thank God the backlog actually now is pretty big, but we're constantly running. We're literally going through about 200 people a week in Zoom rooms because there's been such an overwhelming demand for them. So they have been going on, and now we're in the process of trying to train more matchmakers to be facilitators within these events because there's such high demand. We're now training matchmakers in Israel, we're training matchmakers on the West Coast. We want to get more matchmakers here on the East Coast as well because there's such high demand to be able to do that. And we have not gone, the advertising has not gone beyond Soy with Sinai and its affiliated sites. We have not advertised anywhere, but word gets out extremely fast. And so we hope to continue to be able to do this and allow people on the site to be able to participate in these events.
And just to make it clear to everyone, because most of MGE, the MGE sort of world, a lot of people tuning in now are not necessarily Orthodox or see themselves as Orthodox. If you can just speak to that a little, because we want to really provide a platform for all Jewish people.
So we have events across the board. We have events from not Shomer Shabbat, not being Sabbath observant today, to all the way Lakewood Yeshivish and everything in between. Most of the people are in their 30s. That's probably the key age range that most of the events have been run. But the as far as religious kind of observance, it really varies across the entire board. We had different events depending on what that matchmaker wants to run. We have certain matchmakers that specifically focus on the people that are not the Sabbath observant today, and that's who their group is that they always focus on. And those are the ones actually we're doing more training on right now, as well as on the West Coast, where the span of people who they're willing to date is much greater. It's not necessarily purely people that are Sabbath observant, maybe they're more conservative, etc. There are actually more events we're trying to set up on the West Coast as well. So yes, we are able to service the entire kind of audience I think you have in participating in MGE today.
Thank you.
We've been talking a lot about dating, and obviously this is a dating panel, but I just want to, just for a minute or two, talk about the flip side. Brooke, you and I were talking the other day, and you brought up something really interesting, that there's a lot of like the opposite situation going on. There are people maybe who want to break up, but they're sticking together because they don't want to be alone at this time. Or, and on a different level, you have people maybe who want to get divorced, but they can't get divorced because the courts are closed or because it's expensive and people don't have money nowadays. Like, what's tell us about that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Either people are getting serious and then they go into quarantine and it means they're gonna, sorry, I have my daughter walk in while I'm talking to you, where then it gets more serious. They're like, this is great. I'm enjoying being with this person, and this is the craziest experience. But if we're happy together now, I mean, this is a lot. Or there's the flip side where I see it more, I think, unfortunately, with married couples that have kids, where maybe the husband really was never at home. Well, he was home, but he worked a pretty traditional job. And now he's forced to work from home, and he's home a lot. And it's brought
the dynamics have changed.
It's brought some issues that were probably always there, but really magnified it. And because of this whole, life is short, people are wanting to get divorced. So I think that is the other side of it, is that, you're spending a lot more time with your spouse if you're in a Manhattan apartment in close quarters, and then you have the stress of work and what's going on, and the kids being homeschooled, and it's just a lot. It's a lot, and it's a lot on the women who, they're, especially Generation X women, have it really hard because not only they have careers and they're having to kind of cool that off a little bit to homeschool their kids, then their parents are older, they can't see their parents. So that I've seen a lot of literature on how hard, and it's and we're pretty modern world, but a lot's falling on the woman, you know, to really hold everything up, and it's too much.
Yeah. Rabbi Wildes, on the flip side, you've actually officiated at a couple weddings during this strange time. Why do you feel it's important for people to not push it off, but to instead actually get married during this time?
Yeah, I mean, I just did a wedding yesterday in the backyard in Great Neck. Mazel tov to Noah and Natasha. It was a beautiful wedding. I did another wedding in Scarsdale in the backyard. A lot of backyard weddings. I'll tell you something really sweet.
It's inexpensive.
It's very save a lot of money, you know, and it was really sweet yesterday. There's been interesting halachic literature coming out as to whether or not you can do the wedding without a minyan. Rav Schechter, a great posek of our generation, ruled that you can, in fact, marry a couple without a minyan. You just have to skip, unfortunately, the Sheva Brachot, the 7 special blessings. But the wedding I did yesterday, so we had about 7 or 8 people in total to the wedding, but the next door neighbors, they got on chairs so they could see over the shrubs and be mitzdarif and be included in the minyan, which was also interesting because we were all Ashkenazim in the middle, and it was in Great Neck, so we had a lot of Persians coming in from the outside, which is pretty cool. Listen, I said to both couples, and I have another couple I'm doing soon, please God, and I gave them a blessing, and I'm giving everyone out there a blessing that if you continue with your wedding during this period of time, what it demonstrates is that you are more interested in what really a marriage is about, which is building a Jewish home, than you are in all the niceties and what we call in Hebrew the gashmias, you know, of having hundreds of people, hem and haw, and the caterer and the this and the that, and it's so pure and sweet, you know. And I'll tell you, it's not nearly as wonderful. We're all wearing masks. We're 6 feet away from each other. Brooke, that was my 23-year-old son who just came into the room to grab his computer.
I think we lost Brooke again for a second.
What did he just take from me? I don't even know what just happened. But I just think it demonstrates what marriage is really about, which is building a home, giving to another human being, and getting beyond ourselves. And you have to give up something because it's not as nice. My son, who just came in and pulled the computer away from me, plays guitar, and he came and he sang, and he was the second witness. And we really made it beautiful. And they're married. And they're married. So I encourage people to do it. I understand when people want to, you know, I had another couple, and they basically put off their wedding for a year. Okay, and I'm not into that. I think that's a mistake. I understand why they did it. They want to make sure that they can have the craziest wedding they always wanted to have, and that's important to them. And I don't sit in judgment, but, you know, to push off creating a family and living the best possible life now, you know, which we think marriage is really integral for, I think is a mistake. So I really applaud couples that get married now. And I just want to mention, this is very important for the record, to follow social distancing, masks 6 feet away. It's extremely important that we're part of the solution and not part of the problem. So if you're going to get married, make sure that you follow all the procedures. And the nicest thing is you get to go home with your wife or husband, which was really the whole point of the thing anyway. So why not do it now? That's my feeling.
A quick question from a commenter for Marc Goldman. For those people on Sayu at Sinai, where do they sign up for those Zoom rooms?
I can give you guys a link afterwards. You can forward around to your participants. That's the easiest way to do it. I'll send you a link right after this, and either you can send it around to the group that was on here or send it out. That'll be the quickest way. Because otherwise, try directly through the site without having a site in front of it might be a little challenging.
We have a question from Rachel. She asks, can you give some ideas to make Zoom dates more meaningful? Who wants to try to?
Well, I mentioned one thing before, and then maybe Brooke and Mark, if you want to jump in. My wife was speaking to a woman from our fellowships program, and I mentioned very briefly, and I put this in my blog, that she was sent dinner by the guy. I'm not saying it has to be the guy to send the dinner. The woman can send the dinner to the guy can send it to the woman, whatever you like. I think that makes it more meaningful because you have dinner coming and you eat it together at the same time. You've got an investment, you're doing something, you can comment on the food. Another thing is you might print out, I know this sounds a little nerdy, but you can print out an interesting article and read it in advance. It could be like a little book club thing. Sometimes you need a little distraction, or you can do bingo online. MG's had a lot of social stuff online. You can do a game, or your favorite Netflix film. I mean, if I was dating now, I'd be going through every Rocky. I'm a sick Rocky guy. I would send a Rocky, and the girl will hate it, and we break up probably in the middle of the first Zoom date, but whatever. You know, you can just, I would say movies, articles, dinner. I don't know if you guys have any other ideas.
Yeah, I agree. I think the dinner, maybe wine tasting, that's kind of an easy thing to do. And you could, maybe get creative and talk about it and maybe number them and not, or something creative like that way. I think, Netflix, sure. Like if you find out she's into a series and you're into a series, you can, somewhat binge watch it together. I don't know, just throwing it out there, watch a couple of episodes together and talk about it but yeah, I think you make it more meaningful by putting effort into it and preparing and making it fun and you have to be obviously like you have to really go outside the box with this because it's a different time. But there are positives. It's obviously less expensive. You're not going to mess up on a restaurant or pick a place that's too loud or, have trouble getting in or wait. So there are positives for sure.
I think the commonality that was just mentioned here is finding something that stimulates you personally, whether it's an activity or a book or a band, whatever else it might be, and seeing how that other person reacts towards that. That way, you are beginning to understand what really excites that other person. Mm-hmm. And you can see if the person is as Rabbi, you call them a nerd, and they like Star Trek or they like Star Wars or something else, and that's something they really very much like. And the other person, can they tolerate it? Is it okay? Is it not? How do they react to even the concepts you're discussing? Are they way off in left field or in outer space, literally, that you can't understand where they're coming from? Mm-hmm. Also, or if do they play the guitar like your son does? And is that something that you can discuss about music and how meaningful that is to them as well? I think also, though, setting the expectations of the format of the call can also allow it to be a little bit easier for you. So if you're having dinner, well, then you're not going to have dinner beforehand, whether it's sent to you or not. And that's the format. If you're watching a movie together and that's the expectation beforehand, then you can find out a little bit about the series. If the other person is very much into it and rewatching it again to see your kind of reactions, then maybe you can see what was commented online in a blog about the series, and just see if there's something to discuss. So a little bit of homework definitely goes a long way, but also bringing forth your personality and seeing what's important to you and seeing how that can be used online would definitely make it much more meaningful.
Maya says we should
I don't know if you want me to serenade them.
Yeah. And I was thinking, like, people are more into fitness now. I don't think you could do like a workout date. I don't think that would work out, pun intended. I don't think it would work out, So.
Oh, here's a good idea. Maya has a guy. You can both cook the same meal.
Yeah.
That's pretty clever. I think what we're all saying is you really have to, this Zoom dating or whatever you want to call it, is really making everybody have to think outside the box and be more creative.
Yeah.
But creative in a way of bringing in something that's meaningful to you, because that allows it to progress in a real way. If you are able to, if you're a good cook or you enjoy cooking, even if you're a bad cook, well, okay, you can do that together and laugh about how awful you are. But at least you're doing something that's kind of important to you.
There's definitely less pressure on messing this up. I think there's a lot less pressure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I'm going to use this talking point about cooking to give a plug. The MJE has a cooking show on Facebook Live. So if you go to Manhattan Jewish Experience's Facebook page, click on events, you'll see all the times when the cooking show is on, and you can they teach you how to cook something, and you can cook along at home. While we're doing advertisements, I want to remind everybody, sawyouatsinai.com. You can get a free month, discount code MJE. And if you want to connect with Brooke about any matchmaking for yourself, for your siblings, for friends, you can contact her at wisematchmaking.com. And Rabbi Wildes fans can see Rabbi Wildes every afternoon at 12:30. He does an amazing lunch and learn. So check that out as well. So we just got a few minutes left. I just kind of want to close out here. If each of you can just maybe offer some, hopefully glasses half full, words of optimism, thoughts, words of hope that you can offer people who are in the dating world these days. Brooke, do you want to start us off?
Sure. I do think that, yeah, there are some positives. I think obviously no one asked for this to happen. No one could have predicted this in their wildest dreams. And, and it really is, we don't have to go there. But anyways, but I think the positives are, I do think people are going to refine that list a bit and realize, what are the priorities here? What are most important? And being alone and during this time is going to make a lot more people want to, to change that. And I think that that's a very good thing if you're a single person, right now. Versus if this didn't happen. So I think that is a positive. I think this Zoom dating is forcing people to move away from just small talk that's not so meaningful into more of a meaningful conversation and dialogue. And then I think that can lead to, you becoming serious with someone, even though this does not seem like it would lend itself to that. I do think it can work to your benefit. I think if you had just started a relationship leading into this, I think it can progress quicker because this has happened. So I do think, even though it's a very tough time and no one wants to be alone during a time like this, I think there are a lot of positive things that can happen, and you just have to put the effort in, and I think that, do the work, if you will. And I think that good things will happen.
Yeah. Marc Goldman?
In general, we are really hot-wired to either fight or flight when we're encountering a difficult situation. And it's no different here in all the obstacles that we're really encountering today. And your choice here is you can go into a cocoon as far as your dating is concerned, which is not healthy. It's, you can delay you getting towards your goal, or you could approach it the way any difficult situation can be, which is it might be tough, but it also is going to change things and could change things in a positive way that you never would have been considered otherwise. Some people might have been looking only for a few months, other people for a few years or more than a few years for a spouse. And whether it hasn't been working for a month, a year, or more than that, now you're being forced to change it and try something new. So if you go ahead and fight the situation, and here the analogy of fighting would be saying, okay, I'm going to change the way I'm doing things. It's not what I wanted. As Brooke pointed out, no one wanted this. No one wanted to be in this situation. But since I am, let me try something new that I never would have considered otherwise. So take the opportunity during this times to try something new and see if it works for you. For some people, Zoom dating might be a way to continue meeting way beyond the coronavirus. They might find that format works very nicely for them. Mm-hmm. And I see you smiling, Binyamin. We've had a lot of feedback actually about that it's a quick way to meet some people, and especially after the coronavirus, then we can go out on a date soon afterwards. So it's a nice marrying of that situation of finding somebody online, getting to know them a little bit quickly, and then saying, okay, now let's go out and meet. So you can approach a difficult situation and try to meet that challenge and go forward. And for those of you that have watched any part of the Michael Jordan series, you've seen that he had his challenges. He forced things. He doesn't like to back off. He tries to overcome situations. And I think that's true in all challenges in life, whether it's in your love life, whether it's in other areas, your professional life. You're always going to, unfortunately, that's just part of life, encounter challenging situations. And how you react to that can be positively in trying something new that you didn't want to otherwise, or shying away and saying, woe is me, and what am I going to do? So hopefully we all here go for the first option, which is go out there, try something new, and see if that new way actually works better for you.
Rabbi Wildes, what words of wisdom can you leave us with tonight?
I just heard a lot of words of wisdom right there from both of I just, there's one fundamental question that we need to figure out by the time this thing is over, because once this whole thing dies down, please God, as soon as possible, and we get back to some kind of normative lifestyle, we're going to ask ourselves, how are we any different? How did this change us? Did it change us for the better, or did it push us back? And I don't think I'm saying anything new, but this is one of the most important questions, as Rabbi Soloveitchik, one of the great luminaries of the 20th century, used to say. A Jew never asks why something bad happens. A Jew always asks what. What can I learn? How can I grow from it somehow? And we're going to ask ourselves, how did we grow from the situation? Did we stay the same? If we never prayed before, are we figuring out a way of involving some prayers? If we never observed Shabbat, are we starting to keep a little Shabbat now? If we were not as serious about our dating, or we rely too much on other factors, are we taking the opportunity right now when we're done? Saw you at Sinai, call Brooke up, or another dating website, no offense, Mark, or another great matchmaker, no offense, Brooke, but to say that I can't really move on until I find out who that person is and what am I going to do? Because as daunting as dating is, and as more daunting as it appears it's gotten, you still only need one person. And we need mazel and we need bracha to find that one person. But it all starts with us. How badly do we want it? And if we want it, we will be laser focused to try as best as we can to pursue in a smart and strategic way to find the right kind of individual so we can start giving and building something beyond ourselves. One of the reasons really we asked Brooke and Mark to come on, you guys hear from me all the time, is to plant a seed that maybe if I'm not meeting the right people, here's a website, here's a matchmaker, other websites, other matchmakers. Don't give up. Dating is difficult. It just got harder, but it's still one of the most important things for us to tackle and to emerge from this point, from this episode, from this challenging crisis, and to say, I grew from this time. I'm a better human being. I'm a better Jew. And I got closer to finding Mr. or Mrs. Right to be able to become ultimately the best version of myself. And I used the period, the pandemic, to grow and to develop myself. And that's my blessing to all of us listening. I want and really to thank my co-panelists for joining us and planting these seeds and giving us these ideas with the Zoom dating, whatever it is we've been discussing, that we should all have Hashem's blessing and we should all be zocha, each of us merit to find that special someone and to not wait till this is over and to do it right now because it's so important and so precious.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So I want to just thank everyone for tuning in tonight. I want to thank Brooke Wise of Wise Matchmaking, Marc Goldman of sawyouatsinai.com, and Rabbi Mark Wildes.
Thank you for inviting us. Thank you for inviting us.
Manhattan Jewish Experience. Thank you all for coming. Hope everyone had a good time. Hopefully, maybe we'll see what the response is. Maybe we'll do it again sometime. Thank you very much. Don't forget to count the Omer. And hope everybody has a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure. Really appreciate it.
So much.
Thank you. Thank you, Benjamin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting me.
Thank you, Mark.